Hello, good evening, friends. Welcome. Now is the time for you to grab a seat. Good to see you all. Thanks for being here on a Sunday night. I see a lot of familiar faces, some new faces. Thanks for being here. It is not lost on me that, I was just talking to Stephanie Kessler about how after the holidays, it's just hard to recalibrate and go to things in the evening and put on real clothes. So thanks for being here. I think this is worthwhile and important, so we're glad to see you all here. I think I know all of you in this room, but I'm Mandy Dupar. I'm pastor to students and families, and super excited to put on this event, this gathering with children's ministry. As you all know, and as we're all aware, mental health has really skyrocketed in the past few years since the pandemic, and the trends were already on the rise before that, but we as children's and youth ministries have just really seen just mental health struggles skyrocket among our young people. And so that's kind of why we wanted to put this on and provide a resource for you all. I often tell our students that God created us with a lot of components intentionally. He created us to have hearts and souls, but also to have minds and bodies. And he created us to have those things integrated and in alignment. And each of those parts is something that we can offer back to him. And he doesn't have a hierarchy of things he cares about more. He doesn't just care about our hearts and souls. He also cares about our bodies and our minds. And so I hope that's something you hear tonight, that God deeply cares about your minds and your mental health and our young people's minds and their mental health. And I also want to say that as a pastor, as children's and youth ministries, when young people or when parents come to us and say that they are struggling with mental health or with young kids who are struggling with their mental health, we first and foremost want to commit to pray for your kids and to surround them with encouragement and with community, and to point them to Scripture and to help equip you in those ways. But we also recognize as a church that God has given us some brilliant tools to care for our mental health. Things like therapy, things like exercise and medicine and cognitive behavior tools. And so tonight we want to help offer you some of those tools to put in your toolkit. And we want you to hear that God cares about our minds, and he has given us resources to do that. So with that, I'm going to invite Paige up, and she's going to introduce our speaker.
Welcome. So glad you guys are here. I have the privilege of introducing our speaker, and it is Dr. Andrea Kulberg, who's right here in our front. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and a certified eating disorder specialist with over 20 years of experience in the treatment of anxiety and eating disorders. She's also been trained through the International OCD Foundation in the use of exposure with response prevention, which is the #1 treatment for anxiety. She graduated from Westmont College with a degree in psychology and religious studies, and then went on to earn her master's and doctoral degree in clinical psychology from Alliant International University. Her past employers include various hospital, residential, and outpatient settings, including the Child and Adolescent Eating Disorder Program at Eating Recovery Center in Denver. She's currently the owner and director of Anxiety Experts, and she has taught undergraduate and graduate level psychology courses. She and others in her practice provide an important spectrum of support to persons with anxiety-based disorders. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Kulberg.
Thank you, everyone. I'm thinking that maybe we went off again. So I'll show my face to my computer again and hope it. Oh, here we go. Okay, we're back. I love speaking about anxiety. I just wish I didn't get so highly anxious when I get to do it, but I've been reminding myself all day that anxiety is a normal state. And, can you imagine if God had made us with an inability to tolerate our own internal experience, our own anxiety that God gifted us with. It's not supposed to be that way. We're not supposed to be afraid of our own internal experience. We're not supposed to be afraid of our private events, our own thoughts. We're not supposed to be treating them as threats. Today we're going to talk about how to cope better with anxiety, how you can help young people cope better with anxiety, which, as I said, is temporary and harmless. It's a normal state. So with that, let's go ahead. The first thing I want you to know is that anxiety exists on a continuum and that it's largely genetic. So we all have a predisposal to a certain amount of anxiety. As you see on the left here, we have lower than average levels of anxiety. They never come to my office. I don't even know many of them. So I'm riddled with anxiety. My whole family on both sides is riddled. Yeah, so anyway, average levels of anxiety would be in the middle of the continuum. And then on the right, we have the anxiety-based disorders. 1 in 10 people in the average range has a simple phobia, which is like heights, snakes, needles, vomit. Then generalized anxiety would be sort of next on the continuum. Generalized anxiety is characterized by excessive worry. And it's about normal things, but it gets excessive. It might keep you up at night, your thoughts about the work, the school, the relationships, etc., money. Further along the continuum would be social phobia, where people have panic attacks in some social situations or a lot of irrational social fears. Further along the continuum might be PTSD. You can be moved along the anxiety continuum by having a traumatic experience, or maybe more than one. And so you might develop flashbacks, panic attacks, disturbing recollections of the event, and a lot of avoidance behaviors associated with the event or events. So you may start out with average levels of anxiety in your life, but you may be moved along the continuum based on things that have happened to you. Next would be a panic disorder, where you have panic attacks in multiple types of situations rather than just social situations, although panic attacks can occur with any disorder. OCD would be at the far end of the continuum. It's our most severe anxiety disorder. People often come to my office who have OCD and they'll say, is this problem I'm having my OCD or my anxiety? And I say, well, there's not OCD and anxiety. OCD is the anxiety disorder. And it's our most severe disorder that I treat. It's when your obsessions and compulsions take up more than an hour of your day. And then down at the far end, you're most at risk for developing an eating disorder. So eating disorders occur when your anxiety gets stuck on food, weight, shape, or health. Anybody with an anxiety-based disorder of any kind is at greater risk for an eating disorder. And an athlete is 2 to 3 times as likely to develop an eating disorder as a non-athlete. And so when the eating disorder develops, it can start with any of the anxiety disorders. I had a 6-year-old come in about 6 or 8 months ago, was living on Boost supplement because 2 months earlier, he developed a phobia of choking. He choked on some cracker or something, and then it was, well, I can't eat crunchy things, and then, well, it was, I can't eat any white things, and then it was, well, I can't eat any other crunchy things like fruits or vegetables, and pretty soon it was 6 foods that the kid would eat, and so he was rapidly dropping weight. And in one session, I taught the kid that the anxiety monster wanted to take away his macaroni and cheese and his pizza and everything that he loves, and that it was going to con him into repeatedly narrowing his food variety because anxiety lives on avoidance, which you're going to learn about tonight, and how he was going to stop that, how he was going to become smarter than the anxiety monster, and how he was going to start eating completely normally in the coming weeks, which he did. So that was a relief. But these things can turn into a lifelong eating problem if they're not addressed when the phobia develops. So what is anxiety? So anxiety is worry and body sensations over what might happen that we have no evidence for. So it's not the same thing as fear, which is about real and present danger. Fear is what happens when you step off the curb and a truck comes by and you go, whoo, right? And you might have all the fight, flight, or freeze response, right? But anxiety is both worry and body sensations over what has not happened, but might happen, okay? It's a normal state, as I said earlier. Everyone has anxiety. Nobody gets away from it. It's a disorder when it starts interfering with your life. So when the child I referred to earlier, when their their choking phobia developed into the food restriction, right? It was really interfering with the child's life, so we called that an anxiety disorder. There's no amount of anxiety that can be dangerous. It's only uncomfortable. If you never remember one bloody thing I say tonight, don't forget that no amount of anxiety can be harmful to you. There is nothing in the thoughts or body sensations that can harm you in any way. And I have had, in 25 years of speaking about anxiety, I have had hundreds of people raise their hand or come up to me afterward and say, how might my life have been different if I would have known that, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. That one piece of information might have changed the course of the person's life. And people go to the emergency room every day, all day, talking about heart racing, sweating, shallow breathing, etc., and asking if they're maybe going to have a heart attack or a stroke or whatnot. And they take all their vitals and say, you had a panic attack, and send them on their way. But what they don't say is, no amount of that could have harmed you. And that, to me, is a great tragedy. So the book that I'm writing about anxiety is called So Everyone Sees It When They Open It Every Time, and when they pass it on their nightstand every day, it can't hurt you. That's what the title at the moment. But anyway, so just wanted you to know that one important fact. Also, anxiety is not the same thing as stress. I was reading some of your questions earlier today when I was altering my slides, and I wanted to speak to that, that stress is really external events that can build up, right? Like, I lost my job and my spouse in the same year, or I immigrated to the United States and I am living in a gang zone, or, I don't know, but just external stressors are things that can build up and actually can be harmful to people's health, especially if they perceive the stressful events to be harmful to their health. One of the world experts on stress, probably the world expert, Dr. Karen McGonigal up at Stanford, wrote a book called The Upside of Stress, because in the first 10 or 15 years of her career, she did a disservice, she says, to society by talking all about how stress is dangerous to you. But then she started asking people in her huge studies of 10,000, 15,000 subjects, where she kind of measures their stressors and then sees how fast people die. She started asking them, do you perceive this stress as harmful to your health? And what she found was that the perception of the stress was the biggest moderator variable. So then she had to take back a lot of things that she said about stress. And if you look at her TED Talk on YouTube about the upside of stress, how to make stress your friend, I think is what the talk is called, you can kind of read about the benefits, actually, that stress can have. But we're not talking about stress tonight. The problem with anxiety, the primary problem, is accepting uncertainty. So the problem isn't the thoughts the person is having that are very unpleasant. The problem isn't the body sensations that they're having that are very unpleasant related to their anxiety. The problem is the difficulty accepting uncertainty. So in the continuum I showed you earlier, the further along the continuum you are toward OCD, the greater difficulty you have genetically, brain-wise, in accepting generic uncertainty. Doesn't matter the topic your brain is stuck on. Might be health fears, might be job fears, might be obsessions and compulsions about whether you have the wrong doctrine in your Christianity. Could be anything that it latches onto. Anxiety loves to latch onto things we care about. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it loves to latch on, if you've just had a baby, it will get you stuck on the safety of your baby and whether or not it's going to die of SIDS, right? If you just started a wonderful job, it will attack you there and send all kinds of catastrophic thoughts about how you're going to make a mistake tomorrow and get fired and whatnot. And so that is what it will latch onto, is anything that you love and care about, sadly. I will mention, though, that this is not abnormal. 70 to 80% of human thought in the clinical research is catastrophic. Our brains are the bad news radio. They're always predicting the worst. So we won't be surprised that we need Jesus, because we're always right. The mind is always going to be predicting the worst. So we'll count on that. Let me tell you about the normal body sensations of anxiety so that you can recognize them when you're having them. The number one of which is nausea. So any kind of GI discomfort, I'm going to throw up, I'll have diarrhea, whatever. It's one end or the other. Pit in the stomach, that's how you're going to know primarily. So we've got nausea, racing heart, sweating, or like a cold flush even. Shallow breathing, or like a choking sensation. Some of my clients will say they have an elephant sitting on their chest. Shaking or trembling, tearfulness. A lot of people will sit down to me and sit down to see me and say, I'm depressed. But then they'll tell me all the body sensations of anxiety that they have on a regular basis. But those come with tearfulness. They also come with a lot of feelings of hopelessness that the anxiety is ever going to change. And so, unfortunately, people with anxiety are more prone to developing clinical depression, even though many of them don't have it when they first come see me. Many of them have been misdiagnosed with depression when what they really have are chronic episodes of anxiety. Numbness and tingling is another common body sensation. Any burning, various types of strange sensations. Derealization or depersonalization, this is where the anxiety makes you feel like maybe you're having an out-of-body experience, dizzy, spacey. Maybe this is why people at the hospital, at Cottage, every day in the emergency room, if they aren't saying I'm having a heart attack or stroke, then they're usually saying maybe I'm having hallucinations, or right, they're having these out-of-body experiences. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm having visual or auditory hallucinations. And then the three fears that come with these body sensations are fears of dying, fears that you're going to lose control or go crazy, and there's the fear that the feeling will never end. In our company, Anxiety Experts, and in my book, I call these the 3 lies from anxiety, because I have to go over them all the time with clients, so I've developed sort of like a nomenclature for them. And we really want people to remember that there is no amount of anxiety that can damage their body, and that can damage their mind and make them snap and do something rash, the common fear, nor will it never end, because of course it's temporary. It has a beginning and a peak and a downward slope. Don't miss the definition of panic on this slide, which is the catastrophic interpretation of the normal body sensations of anxiety that we just listed. It is when you believe the 3 lies from anxiety, that it's going to harm your body, that it's going to harm your mind or make you snap, or that it's going to last forever, you keep driving it up into a spike that we call a panic attack, which is a very uncomfortable workout for the central nervous system. I had one recently when I dropped my son off for the Westmont, Lithuania study abroad program on Sunday morning. Woo, we were at the train station, and we were driving away, and I haven't had a panic attack maybe for like 20, 25 years or so. Yeah, since grad school. And it was right after a car accident when, you have panic attacks multiple after you have a terrifying, totaling the car on the freeway. The person hits you from behind and you have panic attacks for weeks. And so I figured out what my clients go through in that moment. But anyway, so not for 20 or 25 years did I have another one until I dropped my kid off at the train station. So I dropped the kid off at the train station, and then we're driving away, and my husband sees me rubbing my chest, and he's like, "How you doing, honey?" And I said, "Oh, fine." The tears are coming down. And he's like, "You still want to go out to breakfast?" "Yes." And I'm like, "I think so," right? Shallow breathing, right? And he's like, "Honey, are you having a panic attack?" Because he's had many. He's a highly anxious person. But anyway, so I'm like, "I think I am." And so "Do you want me to pull over?" "No, honey, you're telling me all the wrong thing. Don't tell me that." "No, we're going to breakfast. Of course we're going to breakfast after this." But anyway, I had a full-blown panic attack all the way to breakfast. Thankfully, I reminded myself that it's temporary and harmless, and so it went right down. But yeah, there you go. I had to practice what I preached last Sunday morning. He's all right. He's in Lithuania. He already went to 2 castles and the KGB museum, and the Westmont chaperones are very nice, so isn't that great? But anyway, back to the talk on anxiety. So, all right. So the good news is that anxiety is temporary and harmless. It has a beginning and a peak and a downward slope. Even a panic attack is just a little workout for your central nervous system. No amount of panic can hurt you. All right. And the thing to remember is that it always will want certainty about something. I wanted certainty on Sunday about my son's safety. Guess what no one can have? Certainty about anyone's safety, right? So that's what prayer is for. All right. Because God is certain. God's the only one that's got the certainty that we seek. And so I left it up to God. All right. So what grows anxiety? How does anxiety get to be an anxiety disorder? We have this genetic predisposal, but how do we really jack it up? What is it that we do that really takes us to the cottage emergency room? Well, what we do is these 3 things. The response to the anxiety is problematic when we do these 3 things: avoidance, reassurance seeking, or rituals. These are called the safety behaviors because they create the illusion of safety. They create the illusion that we can know what only God knows, which is the future. They create the illusion that we can be sure about something that our brain is currently stuck on. And anxiety likes to be stuck on the same topic all the time for some people, and it likes to switch topics for other people. But the problem is always this search for certainty. So we live into a very small box with our avoidance behaviors over time because we are increasingly eliminating things that we will do, places we will go, things we will touch, things we will eat, whatever it is. We keep narrowing it, and we live into a tiny box over time, trying to get what? Thank you so much. A+ so far. Okay, good. Same thing with our reassurance seeking, same thing with our rituals. We're trying to know for sure by checking things, counting things, repeating things, lining them up, doing them over, whatever it is, trying to do them perfectly, checking our weight, checking our work product to get certainty that we're not going to make a mistake and get fired. Could be anything. If it's interfering with our life, it's a big problem, okay? So here's how the anxiety cycle goes. The anxiety monster, as I call it in my office. I always talk about the monster to the kids, but the adults really benefit too. The anxiety monster that wants this 100% certainty gets you stuck on a what-if thought. What if I snap and do something rash? What if I don't have the right doctrine in my Christianity? What if I go to hell? What if I get cancer? What if there is no meaning to life? I got a person stuck, one of my grad students at UCSB right now. What if there's no meaning to life? I have to know if there's a meaning to life. I have to be certain. This is called existential OCD that this person has, getting stuck on that type of a problem. The what if thought comes right before this surge of anxiety, the number 1 body sensation of which is nausea. Oh, my God. Yep, nausea, heart racing, sweating, shallow breathing, derealization, numbness, tingling, cold flush or hot flush. Many times it could be just a not right feeling. Got a whole subgroup of my patients who, they don't get body sensations of anxiety. They get like a not right feeling or a disgust or a dread, very powerful discomfort. So what if something terrible happens? surge of anxiety or other discomfort, and then the demand from the monster is that you do something now to lower the anxiety or to neutralize the thought. And the anxiety will tell you, you've got to do one of these three things, which are the safety behaviors, creating this illusion that you can know for sure the answer to the what if question. The what if I get cancer? I don't know, right? It's going to be some avoidance that the monster is going to demand you do, some reassurance seeking. I got to call my mom and ask her if this terrible thing is likely to happen. Or some ritual, some compulsion that you're going to do that's going to alleviate your distress in that moment. However, the cycle is that when you please the monster, you create the illusion of this certainty, you get temporary relief, temporary reduction in your body sensations, but it feeds the monster, because these are the three things the monster lives on: the avoidance, the reassurance seeking, the rituals. And so even though you did that thing to make you feel better, you actually made yourself worse, because tomorrow or next week, the monster is bigger and louder, and you're going to have an increase in frequency and intensity of your feared thoughts on whatever topic your anxiety is stuck on. You're going to have higher baseline anxiety now during the day and more demand from the monster to engage in those same avoidance behaviors, reassurance seeking, and rituals. And then when you give into that again, you're going to have even more of the same thoughts on the topic that you were trying to get rid of thoughts about, and even higher baseline anxiety that you were trying to lower by doing the safety behavior. So all the things that my clients, when they come see me, are doing, and their well-meaning parents and their well-meaning school counselors and whoever else is in their life trying to help them get rid of either their feared thoughts or their body sensations of anxiety, both of which are temporary and harmless, but they didn't know, is making them worse, okay? So that is what we're up against in anxiety treatment. So the solution is don't feed the monster. The solution is we're going to stop slowly and hierarchically all the behaviors that we have been doing that we thought were making us better, but that have really been making us worse. So for my clients, for example, who are stuck on avoidance of foods because their anxiety has them stuck on whether those foods will make them unhealthy or fat or aren't sourced properly, so they're immoral foods, or whatever the case may be, and they have narrowed down their food variety over time so that their body is unhealthy, right? 1 person per hour in America dies of an eating disorder. The only thing more deadly is opiate addiction, which has only passed up eating disorders in the last 5 years. So we have nothing more deadly. Nothing could be more dangerous or worse than if anxiety gets stuck on eliminating foods. So the worst thing that anything could happen to one of your loved ones is that they start restricting their food variety. Almost always starts with the elimination of meat, unfortunately, in the diet, and then it keeps going to all animal products and or it's high fructose corn syrup, then meat, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It's not about food. It's about wanting 100% certainty that some feared outcome won't occur in my life, and no one can have that, no matter how many foods they restrict. So the people that I'm seeing whose diet consists of 6 clean foods that they'll eat, they still have doubt about whether, that's why we call anxiety the doubting disease. They still have doubt about whether or not they've eliminated enough, right? Whether they're healthy enough, whether they are clean eating enough, whether they are thin enough. It's irrelevant, the topic. There'll be doubt regardless of how much avoidance you're doing. I have a patient who is afraid of pancreatic cancer, so they're eliminating all kinds of products that they're around because they're afraid of this cancer coming that there's no evidence for in their family or personal medical history. And so their doctor sent them to me because they request repeated medical tests, reassurance seeking, right? after which there's always more doubt that the test was correct, or that because no medical test can be 100% certain, because whether you have one MRI or 100 MRIs, they could miss something, because all medicine and science is faulty, and we can't have the thing that the anxiety wants. So slowly and hierarchically in exposure therapy, which is the #1 treatment for the entire anxiety continuum that I told you about, the #2 treatment is actually, first line would be one SSRI medication. So the exposure therapy results in a 70 to 90% reduction of symptoms in the first treatment. And the SSRI medication, if you choose that, would result usually in about a 40 to 50% reduction in symptoms, even with no exposure therapy. So we won't poo-poo medication, because 80% of people with OCD take one SSRI at a minimum for the rest of their life, because this is such a severe mental illness, right? So the exposure therapy treatment results in this slow and gradual and hierarchical elimination of the safety behaviors. And the two things that happen when you eliminate safety behaviors are the frequency and intensity of the thoughts that you fear goes down, and the frequency and intensity of your anxiety body sensations goes down. So your baseline anxiety is at an all-time low at the end of this hierarchical gradual treatment, the first part of which is to learn all the concepts about anxiety itself and how harmless it is, and how you made yourself worse by trying to make yourself feel better. So there's didactics, which are teaching modules that we have developed where in exposure therapy, where we teach the person all about anxiety, all about how thoughts are mostly catastrophic, so we won't expect them to be good all the time, because God made the brain a very creative and amazing place, and we are coming up with worst case scenarios to protect us, to help us adapt to our environment at any time and survive war, famine, and disease, and all the things that happen as a result of sin on this earth. And so we really won't expect that our brains will do anything but work perfectly and predict calamity, but we can't take it very seriously, right? Because 99% of what we think never comes true. So that is the one of the teaching modules that we use with all of our clients. So we're slowly eliminating avoidance behaviors by helping people go into all the situations that they fear gradually. And we eliminate reassurance seeking by asking all of the person's loved ones to stop providing verbal reassurance, which I'm going to go into more in a minute. And then, right, because you can't give them certainty either. No doctor can give them certainty. No mother or father can give them certainty. We can't have what the anxiety wants, and that's what faith is for, right? That's when we leave it up to God and we say, I can't know if that thing is going to happen or not. You do, God, and I'm going to accept the uncertainty here, and I'm going to go on with my day without trying to do anything to get a sure answer to this question. I'm not going to stay home from something to try and get a sure answer. I'm not going to avoid touching something. I'm not going to avoid eating a variety of all foods. I'm not going to avoid going to that place or interacting with that person. I'm going to press submit on my work document and accept the uncertainty that it might have a mistake in it and I might get fired, because no one can know if they'll make a mistake at work that gets them fired. And I won't be special as a person with an anxiety disorder and get guarantees that people with lower levels of anxiety don't get. So I'm going to learn to accept that uncertainty. And I'm not going to do that checking compulsion of going over my work product any more times than a reasonable person with lower levels of anxiety would go over their work product. I have another graduate student right now who lives in Colorado who is decreasing all of her checking compulsions with her homework She's not allowed to watch her videos over and over again anymore for her coursework because none of the other A students in her PhD program are watching the videos over and over again that their teachers record for them. She's not allowed to color code her notes in ways that are excessive for hours and hours because none of the other graduate students in her program who are high achievers are doing that. So we're stopping all of those school-related compulsions while she accepts thoughts that maybe she's going to get bad grades now because of that. So far, no bad grades, but I can't be certain. Okay. All right. So, people with OCD like that, however, is highly correlated with genius. So even though all their parents are afraid, I had a young man, he's going off to MIT not too long ago. His dad was, we don't want to get rid of all his compulsions because then he won't be as good a student. And I said, oh, yes, we are, because OCD is like cancer. You know, you leave a little of it in there, and you give the monster an inch, and it takes a mile, right? It takes over the person's whole life again. So we eliminated all those compulsions while his dad accepted uncertainty that maybe he was going to be less smart somehow. The guy's a flipping genius, so we weren't worried. I wasn't worried about that. But anyhow, yeah. All right, guys. Well, so you're thinking, how am I going to get my kid on board with this? My kid is so avoidant. They have a fit every time I try to get them to do a thing that makes them anxious. And you've maybe even become a parent that you never thought you'd be, where you accommodate, so many of their demands, which, congratulations, if you've done that, you're perfectly normal. 90-something% of families accommodate when they have a relentless anxiety disorder, living in their house, right? And so we won't be shaming ourselves for that, because shaming yourself never helped any parent, I'm pretty sure. So at least it didn't help me. I don't know. Mine are like 21 and 24 now. And I spent a lot of time shaming myself. Never made me a better parent. So anyway, don't bother. So the way you're going to get your kid on board, if they are extremely resistant to these ideas that their anxiety is temporary and harmless, is you're probably going to have to incentivize them. The reason why people have great difficulty making change in their anxiety-based problem is because anxiety disorders are help rejecting. We want to stay in our avoidance behaviors. We want to stay in our reassurance seeking. And the parent who doesn't provide the reassurance anymore feels unloving and like they're abandoning their child. The thing the parent doesn't want to do, God bless them all, is hurt their child, right? And when they start requiring that their child move toward their discomfort, the child inevitably says, you don't understand me, you're making me worse. If you loved me, you would let me avoid this thing or stay home or whatever. So many of you are smiling. I don't have to explain this. So anyway, it's just important to remember that you've got to give your child or this person you love in your youth ministry the gift that they haven't gotten yet, which is to accept discomfort and uncertainty, right? They're gonna learn to accept the body sensations of anxiety and their catastrophic thoughts that are going to come anyway. There is no amount of regular talk counseling that's going to provide evidence against the feared thoughts that is going to make the person feel better so they can do their life. It doesn't happen in that order. It happens the other way. It happens that they learn to feel better. They learn to think their feared thoughts and feel their discomfort, their harmless body sensations, and then change happens. So, in other words, when the people come see me, they say, if you just take away my anxiety, then I could do my life. I am going to make them better at feeling their anxiety and do their life. And that's when their feared thoughts are going to go down in frequency and intensity, and that's when they're going to have lower baseline anxiety. So it just happens in the opposite order that the person wants. Make me feel better, I'll do my life. I'm going to actually have you do your life while you're uncomfortable and accepting uncertainty, and you're going to feel better. You're going to get better at feeling your feelings and thinking your thoughts, and then Your thoughts are going to go down in frequency and intensity. You'll still have catastrophic thoughts. Everyone's got it. But they're going to be lower in frequency and intensity. You'll be more accepting of them, and your body sensations of anxiety will be lower. So that's what we're doing in exposure therapy treatment. The message I'm trying to send you today is we're not trying to get rid of anxiety. This is because when you do that, when you try to get rid of harmless and temporary body sensations, or when you try and get rid of thoughts that are going to come anyway, you're telling the body and mind that your normal internal private events are dangerous to you. You're treating your child or whatever young person you're working with as if they're fragile and they can't handle the same catastrophic thoughts that the rest of us are having, or that they can't handle the temporary and harmless body sensations of anxiety. So when you're believing those lies about anxiety as a parent, caregiver, or the client, it sends off alarms in the body that the anxiety can't be handled, and then panic sets in. So the more you're resisting the anxiety, the more you're bracing against the anxiety as it's building, the higher it's going to peak and the longer it's going to stay around. So the sooner you turn toward it, we actually have something called wave coping or palm tree coping that we teach clients about. The sooner that they turn toward the anxiety and dive right into it, telling it to wash over them like a wave, we tell them the bring it mentality, the sooner it can peak and go down. Anxiety wants to complete. So the longer you are trying to get rid of it, trying to calm down, trying to brace against it, trying to thwart it, the higher it will go and the longer it will take to peak. So we don't want to drive up uncomfortable thoughts or body sensations by trying to shut them down. The body is designed to handle intense anxiety, including repeated panic attacks. In case you came in late or didn't hear me say that earlier. So the way you can help the kid with a current surge of anxiety, one that comes up in the next few weeks, is to teach them these 3 steps. You can remind them that no amount of anxiety can harm them. If you keep saying that over and over time, it does function as reassurance, I will warn you. But at first, the kid doesn't know, right? Most people, the day they come see me and I tell them that their anxiety is harmless, they're like, oh, nobody told me that before, right? So we first want to tell the kid that their anxiety can't harm them, and then we want to help them to embrace uncertainty. The monster hates it when we say, maybe that bad thing will happen, maybe not. When we accept the worst case scenarios, the monster hates that because we've already said the worst thing that could possibly happen. And so why would the monster continue to send off alarms in our body if we've already said, I might fail the test, right? So when your kid comes to you, Mom, I studied the best I can, but what if I fail the test? You're going to say, everyone can fail a test, honey, and all you can do is the best you can. Maybe, this will be the one you fail. I don't know, right? The kid that's coming to you that says that hasn't really failed many, if any, tests. But even if they have, you can say, well, we can't really know for sure, honey. All we can do is study the best we can and see how it turns out. We can't really be certain. So it's love to help the child embrace uncertainty. Very loving. So we really want to help make a statement that embraces uncertainty. I remember when we first moved here, I was reminded of this because we were talking before I came up here about when we first got to Santa Barbara, and Reed, he was going to the library. We were homeschoolers, so we were always, the library is the first place we go in every city we come to. So he's at the library the first few days we're here, and he calls me and says, Mom, I'm on my bike at the Santa Barbara Library. We lived on the west side, and I think you should come pick me up. Highly anxious child. So I said, what's the worst that can happen, honey? Any mistake could be fatal, Mom. That was the response. And I said, well, it is true that people have bike accidents every day, Reed. And, you already rode there yesterday because he wants to go to the library first thing when we come. So I said, I'll see you at home, honey. I love you. So anyhow, he came home. But I did not provide him reassurance because why do I want to jack up my kid's anxiety the first few days he's in our new town? I want him to accept the uncertainties that we all accept. And so I did not provide him reassurance in that moment. I was having a good, therapeutic moment there. So the third thing we're going to do is we're not going to accommodate. We're going to expect the child to do the thing that they're afraid of, even though that's going to make us have to accept our own discomfort and uncertainty, right? So what is accommodation? Why is it that we provide reassurance and accommodate children's distress? And what is it? So the definition is when we yield to a child's demands or facilitate avoidance behaviors or rituals, that's accommodation. Or we assist with or complete tasks that they can do themselves or that someone their same age would be doing themselves. And this goes for adult children too, right? If we are financially supporting adult children way into their, adult years, or we are not requiring that they, gradually and hierarchically pay for more things so that they are required to go out and live a normal life, then we're accommodating, right? Decreasing their responsibilities at home, school, or socially. So we really want to require that the person face their discomfort over time by stopping accommodation gradually and hierarchically. And we often need a therapist's help to do that because we might have been doing it for so long, we're just not sure how to make a hierarchy like that. The reason why we accommodate is because it's easier in the beginning. Anxiety disorders are very demanding and very relentless, and it's really hard to tolerate the child's distress. So we think it might be helpful. We don't know. I mean, maybe the school counselor said we should let the kid leave the classroom repeatedly, when that is the worst possible thing that could happen to the kid with anxiety, right? They write it into the 504 plan. Oh my gosh, right? Nothing could be worse for that kid with anxiety, right? They eventually, right, they're living into a smaller and smaller box. So first they can leave the class, they can go to this area of the classroom, then they can leave the classroom, then they can stay, then they're calling the parent to go home all the time, and pretty soon they should homeschool, right? Which I got nothing against homeschool. I homeschooled my kids for 15 years. I love homeschooling. We just didn't do it because of anxiety, right? We did it because the school stunk in there we lived in. But anyway, so I was teaching them, Latin at home, and so that was fun. But anyway, I got nothing against homeschool, but we're not going to do that for anxiety reasons, okay? We're going to get the help we need and use the number one treatment so that your kid doesn't believe that they are more fragile than other children and can't live a perfectly normal life, because that is not true. Anxiety is the most treatable mental health problem. So the other reasons why we accommodate, you feel guilty or mean if you don't accommodate, and maybe your kid said so, and you're scared maybe of your child's behavioral response. Maybe you're afraid they'll throw a fit in the restaurant or whatnot if you require that they do something to face their anxiety. Or maybe you struggle with anxiety yourself, so it's difficult for you to overcome your own distress in order to require that your child do the thing that is making them highly anxious. So the messages we send when we accommodate are you were in real danger and you needed to be rescued. Maybe your anxiety is too much for you. You can't handle it. You can't live a normal life. You can't do your life. I'm responsible for handling your distress, not you, etc. And none of us wants to send those messages, right? We didn't know. Right, most of you thought anxiety was dangerous before you walked in the door, so of course you were accommodating anxiety. One thing you can do instead of accommodating is to empathize. It seems like you're very anxious. This looks like it's going to be a hard one for you to go to soccer today. Seems like you're afraid that maybe you'll make a mistake, or such and such. You can read the kid's mind probably. It seems like you're afraid something bad's going to happen. Sounds like it's going to be hard to go to soccer today. Redirect the child to the task at hand, or you can use emotion coaching. You can give a couple reasons why the child might be distressed. This is very helpful to children with higher levels of anxiety. I call it the because strategy. So you might say, of course you don't want to go to soccer today because you had high anxiety last time, and because you think it'll happen again, and because you imagine that you'll kick a goal the wrong way down the field like happened that one time, and maybe everyone will be mad at you. Do you want me to get the backpack, or are you going to get it, honey? Right? Because right there, you're still going to go on with the thing, but, of course you don't want to go to the birthday party because you're afraid no one will talk to you there, and because you'll be maybe a little anxious like last time, and because you're scared that they won't like your gift, because I remember you said that in the store. Did you want mommy to get your coat, or you going to do it, right? We're still going to go on with the next thing. The child might say that you are unloving or mean or unfair or they hate you, and over time, you will learn to get better at listening to what kids say. I do swear when I say this to parents, kids say blank. Kids just say stuff, right? They just say stuff. And we've got to be good, especially with adolescents, at hearing, kids just say stuff. So we have to be able to tolerate that. And we're not going to really, unless they're saying they're going to harm themselves and we're going to drive them to the emergency room, that's up there too. If the kid threatens to harm themselves or someone else, or starts destroying property when they're throwing a fit because we're not accommodating their anxiety anymore, then we will call some people to come to the house. We might call 988 or 911, or drive them to the nearest emergency room, because we're going to take that very seriously. If a kid threatens to harm themselves, we're not going to let those threats go on because we don't think they're serious. We want a professional to evaluate that, right? And we're going to act accordingly instead of just accommodating their anxiety, right? Let's see. So the last thing on verbal reassurance, which is a form of accommodation, the reasons why not to provide it are because there's never going to be enough. The more you answer the child's question about whether or not something bad's going to happen, the more they'll want. The anxiety is a bottomless pit in terms of seeking reassurance. There's no amount of, if I have a client who, let's say their anxiety got them stuck on whether they're going to hell, there's no amount of pastors or chapter and verse that's going to help that, because it has nothing to do with religion. It is about wanting 100% certainty that they have it exactly right. And as Dr. Wenberg used to say at Westmont College, may he rest in peace, we're not going to know the answer till we get to the big seminary in the sky. So whatever the question is, we're not going to know the answer till we get to the big seminary in the sky. So we won't be trying to get 100% certainty about the thing, because no one can know. People have been debating these issues for thousands of years, and we're not going to be the one person who has the answer on the thing. That's what faith is for, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe my whole life with this Christianity thing is a lie, and it's just a fairy tale. I don't know, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway, because there's nothing else I'd rather believe in. So you guys are stuck with me. That's the way it is. But no one can prove it to me that it's 100% sure, right? I have to accept uncertainty like everyone else. Even though the Bible says, be anxious for nothing, that's what it's saying, is you've got to accept uncertainty, right? Your anxiety is going to be lower if you are leaving the answers, the sure answers for things, to the only one who knows them, and not trying to get to them yourself, because that's what jacks up anxiety. So 3 reasons not to provide verbal reassurance. There's never enough. It's exhausting. And when you help your child accept their discomfort and their feared thoughts, they can stand up to the anxiety monster. They can say the same thing. If you say, we can't be sure about that, honey, whether you have one mammogram or 1,000 mammograms, you might have questions about whether or not there's cancer because no doctor or test can give you a sure answer. When you say that, that is so loving because it helps the person accept their discomfort, accept their body sensations of anxiety, and go on with their day without doing their compulsive checking or their reassurance seeking. It's a form of compulsion, reassurance seeking. So I want to answer some of your questions now. There's some fact sheets and books about anxiety. There's some information on the table outside if you need any other phone numbers or whatever for us at Anxiety Experts. But I wanted to speak to a few questions that I didn't get to in the talk that came in the form of the written questions that Paige delivered to me before this. One of them was on sleep and anxiety. I will say that there's nothing anxiety loves to get stuck on as much as sleep. You know, people who are preparing for work or sport or whatever want to know that they're going to be rested. And so they start to do all kinds of rituals and other behaviors around sleep. They're trying to guarantee something that no one can guarantee. And so it's actually the people who do more and more rituals around sleep, who stay in bed when they're not sleeping, who have the least sleep. So I want to encourage you to have normal health behaviors like eating a variety of all foods in moderation, tiring yourself out with some joyful exercise, having a good spiritual practice, having good social support, etc., and try to go to sleep at a reasonable hour, but don't do any rituals surrounding sleep because you will not get any closer, whether you have 5 rituals before you go to bed or 500, you won't get any closer to 100% certainty that you will go to sleep. So we're going to have some reasonable routine around sleep like people who sleep well do, but we're not going to have any rigid rules about sleep. How many hours you have to have, we're not having rigid rules about that. We're still going to get up and go to, yoga or go to, I don't know, I get up at 5:25 and go to swim team even if I didn't sleep because I swim well sometimes when I had 4 hours, and I swim horribly sometimes when I had 9 hours because you never know what you're going to do because no one has a crystal ball. So you're not going to follow any rigid rules around sleep. And if you're not sleeping, please get out of the bed after 15 to 20 minutes of trying. Do something meaningful to you and, fold your laundry, read your book, whatever. And then try again when you're tired for 15 to 20 minutes. If you don't sleep, get up and do something meaningful. Try again when you're tired. And get up at the same time each day, regardless. And don't nap in the day because you won't sleep at night. All right, so those are my sleep hygiene things. Any other questions that I didn't answer that you came here because you wanted to know a thing or you wanted my thought on a thing that I can speak to tonight? Yes?
In one of the slides, it mentioned at the bottom, don't try to find the root of the problem.
Oh, good, yes. So with anxiety, there isn't really a root to the problem. The trying to know something for sure is the problem. So trying to get to the root of the problem is the problem, really. And so it isn't that in exposure therapy that we're avoiding talking about someone's history or anything. We do want to know anything that happened in the person's life story that might have made their anxiety worse, especially any traumatic events. But actually, 2/3 of the people that I see have no traumatic event in their history, And they are stuck on trying to get certainty about something anyway. The most common thing is people's social perceptions of them. They're trying to get certainty that people won't reject them, that their partner loves them as much as they love their partner, that that people are not perceiving them to be a burden, or wanting certainty that they won't be rejected by their peers or whatnot. And many times there is no event in their life that caused that to happen, even though that's what you might look for in years of supportive counseling, which is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with supportive counseling, please. And in fact, it's really great if you have a marital problem, or a difficulty with depression, or you've got issues in your parenting, or whatever. We all want to go. I've been to counseling. I don't know if y'all have, but anyway, I got plenty of marital therapy in my history. But if you've got an anxiety-based disorder and you keep talking about your history without learning the concepts of embracing uncertainty and moving toward your harmless and temporary anxiety, right? I got people come to me every week who have years of therapy. No one ever said to them that they need to be able to move toward their thoughts and their body sensations of anxiety. No change in their symptoms at all from years and years of talking about their history. And so that can be really great. So talking about my history was really great, for example, for healing stuff in my marriage. That's fabulous, right? But it's not going to help the avoidance, reassurance seeking, and rituals that are related to anxiety, unfortunately. Does anybody else have a follow-up on that, or do you have a follow-up? Because that's a really important thing. I have people who leave therapy trying to sometimes, because they want certainty even about the treatment. So they're like, maybe if I have to face all this discomfort, maybe this is the wrong treatment. Maybe I need EMDR, or maybe I need TMS. Maybe I need this other thing. I don't know. But it's just, the monster wants you to do anything but move toward your feared thoughts and move toward your body sensations. It wants you to do anything to keep up the same avoidance and reassurance seeking and rituals, to keep you locked in that very small box that you've lived into. So, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm a little worried that my question is...
Reassurance seeking?
I would be curious what your thoughts are. Like, everyone keeps reading that rates are surging in anxiety for teens and young people over the last, whatever, 10 years. And I've read all kinds of different reasons why: fragility culture, social media, pandemic. I'd be just curious to know your thoughts on if there's one or more, if it's all of it. And the reassurance in that is, of course, like, we can't eliminate any of those things, and I'm not wanting an answer so that we can just say, okay, well, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's this curiosity component of, like, why are we seeing such high rates?
Yeah, I mean, the social media is a huge problem, obviously, for a lot of reasons, and we've got an intensive outpatient program for adolescents where a certain proportion of them have been bullied on social media or had other terrible things happen to them with regard to social media. So obviously it doesn't help anybody's anxiety, and I wouldn't say that it's a part of what really brought the person along the continuum for a majority of my clients, especially adolescents, but I think it certainly can contribute. And I will tell you that I have had a number of adolescents where that was the bullying on social media or something really was the catalyst for the onset of their anxiety, for panic attacks or whatnot. But I wouldn't say that's a majority at all. And I guess I guess what we focus on is we focus on teaching the adolescent to, if the anxiety disorder is using that against them to fuel their thoughts about social rejection, then we help them embrace uncertainty about what they post, and help them make good choices about what they're going to read and subscribe to. And then we ask them to accept uncertainty about how their posts are going to be perceived, not check and recheck how many likes. And we actually at this point are developing a program for people who have internet-based addictions, not just social media, but gaming and all of that, which is not necessarily anxiety-based, but it's become such a prominent problem that we are finding that we need a specialized program for it that's separate from our anxiety-based disorders treatment. So, because we've got these parents that just can't get their kid away from the machines. So, anyway, but I hope that helps. I think there was one more.
Yeah, just a basic or general question. Maybe it's a boundaries question. So for those of us who aren't therapists, but we're working with kids or around kids, obviously these are good principles to use, but maybe just touch a little bit on how can I use this with other parents' kids? Because I'm exposed to them as a coach or administrator or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can impart the basic principles of anxiety as temporary and harmless, and you can certainly listen to the catastrophic thoughts and whatnot, and you can remind kids that 99% of what we think never comes true, and that we really can't take our thoughts too seriously because they are going to predict the worst, and there's always going to be something horrible that could happen, and we're going to just cross that bridge if we come to it. We're going to accept uncertainty, and as things come up, we'll deal with them then. We won't bleed before we're cut, as we say in anxiety treatment. The person with higher levels of anxiety is taking precautions that people with lower levels of anxiety aren't taking. So let's not take these precautions until we have evidence that we should take those precautions. And then if the child says anything to you where they're threatening their own, their safety, or talking about self-harming or something, then obviously you're going to try to get them some referral or to a mental health professional. But I guess I would remind them of those concepts about anxiety being temporary and harmless, making statements that embrace uncertainty about, well, we just can't know that. One of the things that kids are just getting so obsessed about today is because it's a part of puberty when you question your gender and your sexuality and your whatever, and the mind of the anxious child or adolescent wants certainty about how to label themselves. And it's really awful when a kid sits down in my office and says, they're highly anxious. They've been seeing me for OCD or social phobia or whatnot for months. And then they say, in my health class last week, they were talking about, they gave us this identity flower. This was like a DP student not too long ago. They gave us this identity flower and wanted us to pick, where we are on this gender continuum and or this gender flower and this sexuality flower. And I just got to know. And so their anxiety's latching onto this, right? And they're wanting certainty about something that was brought up to them that they got stuck on, that maybe they weren't even questioning or thinking about until that came up, in their health class. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have been, but I just find that these kids, so then this kid says to me, well, maybe I'm questioning my gender, and I asked some follow-up questions like, well, were you questioning this, when you were? She's like, 15. Were you questioning this, many years ago? Were you thinking about how you maybe just don't fit, among your female peers and, blah, blah, or whatever? No thought of that. No, I was fine. And so anyway, it's just when anxiety gets latched onto something that really wasn't even relevant to the person before it got brought up, it's just really sad to me because OCD in particular loves to latch onto that stuff. What if I'm gay? I have to know if I have to check my, body sensations, my attractions around, the same gender, and I have to get certainty that, that's not true about me, and because of all these ramifications in my life, if it were true, and I don't feel that way. Or it could be some other way. Maybe the person identifies as gay, and they're having thoughts that, maybe I'm not the person I thought I was this whole time, right? Could be either. But it's just this search for certainty that's the problem. It isn't the person's thoughts that are the problem. It isn't their body sensations of anxiety that's the problem. It's the response to those thoughts and the search for the thing that no one arrives at, no matter how many times they check their thoughts, their feelings, their attractions, their doctrine, their whatever, right? Their health. Doesn't matter. Next question.
How do these basic concepts change or not change if you're dealing with an individual who has known sensory processing issues or autism?
Good. Excellent. Yeah. So about 30% of our clients with higher levels of anxiety have features of autism or have an autism diagnosis. And the thing about autism is that it has a lot of organic anxiety that comes along with it, right? And it has the key feature of cognitive rigidity. And so the person with autistic traits wants sameness at all costs. And so it produces a lot of discomfort for them to step out of their rigid routines. And so we use exposure therapy as a wonderful treatment, but we go in much smaller increments, and we expect a much slower change rate. And most of the therapists at my 3 locations have ABA training, which is a key feature I look for when I'm hiring them, because we really want that understanding of the behavioral learning theory, basically, and behavioral interventions that will incentivize young adults and kids and adolescents to make those hierarchical changes and train the parents in what to say and do during those high emotional dysregulation moments that they're going to encounter when they're requiring that child to face their discomfort. So yeah, thank you for asking that. It's very important. And so we learn a lot of emotion coaching with the because thing I was referring to earlier. We teach the parent a lot of emotion coaching so they can help the child who is kind of co-regulate the child who is very dysregulated and kind of bring their brain down to a state where they can kind of take instruction again and hear what's being said and follow directions. So yeah, that's a more complicated scenario, but something we deal with a lot, so we won't be intimidated by that. And we will want that child to reach absolutely their full potential in the world. And because I don't know if y'all know that autistic people like Elon Musk go pretty far in life. So they make all of our best inventions. So we won't be colluding with any limitations in our autistic people, because those are very gifted brains many times. So, right, 40% of people with autism have superior IQs, and 60% have a challenge with their IQ, but they can still do many incredible things in their life. In the back.
I think I have a hard time with the anxiety is not harming you.
Yes.
I work with teenagers. I know that we make the safety calls when there is self-harm, but I just maybe wonder if you could explain, because you feel anxiety, then you're led to do this behavior, which is the harming you.
Yes.
Just to kind of clarify,
No, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much. So self-harm is most usually related to depression. It's something that usually comes up when, if the person also has an anxiety disorder, they might be self-harming because they are very hopeless about their anxiety disorder changing, and they have now developed clinical depression, which is characterized by hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, the feeling that you're a burden to others, usually a lot of dark thoughts, morbid thoughts, suicidal ideation, and self-harming gestures at times. Sometimes self-harm can also be a compulsion to lower anxiety, and we do tease that out whenever we are treating someone. So sometimes it's also a distraction from body sensations of anxiety in the moment. Maybe the person is having nausea, heart racing, sweating, shallow breathing, numbness and tingling, and derealization, and so maybe they use self-harm as a way to distract themselves or interrupt their surge of anxiety or panic attack. But we, of course, want to, when we are treating either the anxiety or the depression, the main thing that we're trying to do is help the person stop the experiential avoidance of whatever emotion or thoughts they're having so that they can cope some other way. Because the thing that in psychology, what we've learned is that all symptoms are related to something called experiential avoidance. So it's some thought, feeling, or memory that we're having that we don't want to be experiencing, so we use some symptom to cope with it. Maybe we drink alcohol because we don't want to experience some memories of our childhood, some thought, feeling, or memory that is too painful for us, so we develop this symptom of drinking, right? Same thing with depression. Maybe we have some thoughts that we are a burden to our family and we'd be better off dead, and we have feelings of worthlessness. Maybe those relate to some memories we have, maybe not, but we might be having that experience of this depression, and so we might develop a symptom of self-harm to cope with that, right? So what we want to do in any good treatment is we want to help the person be able to experience their painful thoughts, feelings, and memories without choosing to avoid or escape them through the use of their symptom. So that's the goal of the treatment, and I hope that speaks to the question that we don't want to leave any stone unturned or not address any depression that might be going on, because that is it's imperative that we get to some healthy coping. Yeah.
You were talking about the 6-year-old earlier, so kind of like thinking about that age of children, school-age children, I've heard so many different things in terms of food anxiety for kids.
Yes.
You should expose them to food, but not make them try it. You should make them try it, but they can spit it out if they don't like it. You should make them eat it. Like, what do you do with kids like that?
Well, a general rule that I tend to give parents is that it's the parent's job to put a variety of all foods in front of the child every few hours, and that it's their job to decide whether to eat it and how much. So it really doesn't go well to force your child to eat things, and you have to finish this to get that, and all. It just becomes, we don't want to have battles around food because it makes food too important. And sometimes a no thank you bite or something, I guess, is okay, but really children do what we do with our food, and if we are eating a variety of all foods, they're going to eat a variety of all foods. If we're dieting and talking about good and bad foods and we're rigid about food, and they're going to be taking notes. And if we're making food so important by making them finish things or whatever, that's going to really be problematic. Now, of course, if the child has an eating disorder, that's a whole other thing, right? The kid I was talking about earlier, his parents were asked to present his meals and snacks every few hours by myself and the dietitian. I'm one of my 3 dietitians. And they were told the basic amounts to give of protein, starches, and fats. And then he was either to eat the food or drink a supplement, and he was rewarded for, because he was, rapidly dropping weight and falling off his growth chart, and so he was rewarded for either eating the food or drinking the supplement, but a few weeks later, he was rewarded only for eating the food, right? Because we just wanted him to get the nutrition the first few weeks, but then we increased the foods that he feared each week in treatment until he was eating every single thing, and he was shrinking the monster and sticking his tongue out at the monster all the time, and now he eats perfectly normally, but anyway, so yeah, you really want to, when you're parenting, check your own food and fat fears at the door, and present the foods to your child and let them decide what to eat and how much, and they're going to do what you do mostly. So, but you can ask me more about that at the end if you want. Yeah.
I was wondering what you recommend for ways to help someone through an active panic attack.
Oh, yeah. So when you're having a panic attack, we want to use those 3 steps that I was talking about earlier. So diving into the wave means that you're really going to invite the body sensations to actually intensify. It's the opposite of what you would learn in the bro science on the internet, right? The bro science on the internet tells you to do things to calm down. But really what we want to do is we want to let the anxiety complete by inviting the body sensations to get worse. I know it sounds crazy, but there's something in the brain called paradoxical intention that we teach people about in exposure therapy. And when you're telling the body to have more of something that is distressing it, it actually assumes that you must not be in danger and stops sending off the alarms. So when you tell, the nausea to get as bad as you need to get, and if I'm going to throw up, let's just do it now and stop all the drama of building up to it. And if I'm going to faint, go ahead and, heart race as fast as you can, because Dr. Kulberg said it, that you can't give me a heart attack, even though it sure feels like it. I mean, I don't know. When I have panic attacks, when I had them after my terrible car accident and was rearing it on the highway, and when I was 20-something, I thought I should drive straight to the emergency room. But then I was like, maybe this is one of those things that my clients, my first year in my internship, maybe my clients are talking about this is a panic attack. So anywho, I did whatever I had already learned, which was to invite it to intensify. And I never stopped doing what? I never went into my avoidance behaviors. I never stopped what? Yes. Oh, yeah. So there you go. So step 1, invite the body sensations to intensify. Tell them to get as bad as they need to get. So you're diving into the wave. So you're going to create the best possibility for the anxiety to go down fast. And it's going to go down, the sooner you turn toward it and don't stiffen up and brace against it, which, right, the wave, or try and run away from it, which, the wave, right? So the best way through the wave, the best way to cope with the wave is to go toward it. The second step would be to agree with thoughts that something bad might happen. You're having this panic attack because you just dropped your son off for Lithuania, and you're saying, maybe he'll be safe there, maybe not. I can't know. I'm going to talk to God about it. I can't be sure. And I just want him to have this wonderful experience. And so you're going to agree with thoughts that whatever your worst thoughts are, you're going to accept the uncertainty about that. And then the third thing you're going to do is go on with your day, whatever you planned anyway. So whatever anxiety-producing thing you were going to do that you're having a panic attack over, possibly, you're going to do it anyway. Whatever the anxiety is telling you to avoid or change your behavior about, you're not changing your plan at all. You're going to breakfast anyway, as I was saying at the beginning. So, all right, guys, I got to quit. But please come up and ask me any other question. And my business card is at the back in the foyer. All right, take care.
Thank you so much. I just want to say 2 things. One is Andrea talked about the emotion coaching process. That was the thing, the because. Memorize that. I've probably used it on some of your kids, actually. So no, it's really wonderful. That's a really wonderful tool, both with children and with adults who are experiencing intense emotions. So I just want to point that out as a great thing. But just let's pray together before we take off. God, I'm so thankful that you made us as complex beings with mind and spirit and body. And God, thank you for each of these adults that came tonight who are caring for children and youth and young adults, God. And we pray that you would equip us to help those that we love to live life to the full. And we thank you, God, for the gift of Dr. Kulberg and her just the work that she's done and is doing in our community. We ask that you'd bless her. Thank you, Lord. Amen. All right. Thanks for coming.
Joy could you see beyond?